of Orient are bearing gifts. We traverse afar, field and fountain, moor and mountain, following yonder star. Oh, star of wonder, star of night, star of royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect light.
Born a king on Bethlehem's plain, gold I bring to crown him again. King forever, ceasing never, over us all to reign.
Oh, star of wonder, star of night, star of royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect light.
Frankincense to offer have I, incense owns a deity nigh. Prayer and praising, all men raising, worship him, God most high.
Oh, star of wonder, star of night, star of royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect light.
Myrrh is mine, a bitter perfume, breath of life, of gathering gloom, soaring, sighing, breathing, dying, sealed in the storm of doom. Oh, oh, oh.
Star of wonder, star of light, star of royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect light, guide us to thy perfect light, guide us to thy perfect light.
When hope came down, we've been in a series called Three Kings. Caleb, take us back to the offering back there, would you? Because I showed everybody and then I didn't put it in the offering. That's probably not real good. We've been in a series called Three Kings. To give you just a little tiny bit of background, if you haven't been with us the whole time, the three kings, okay, that we hear about are the three wise men. First of all, we don't know that there were three. Okay, the reason that historically they've talked about three is because there were three gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. We're going to talk about those in a little bit today. So because there were three gifts, they've always kind of attributed three kings. We know that there were wise men from the east, people that had been watching the skies and noticing this star. But they did not show up at Christmas, okay, what we consider to be Christmas. They did not show up the night that Jesus was born, because they saw the star, and the star appeared over Bethlehem on the night that he was born. So when they see that, then they begin this trek across the east. And they come over to where Jesus is, and they come with this sense of great expectation. They're seeking the one who has been born, the King of the Jews. And they go to Herod and they go to the other officials and they say, "Where is this one?" And they're like, "What are you talking about? We have no clue." See, they had been watching expectantly, seeking the one that was going to come. But those who were closest to him, those who were closest to Jesus, had gotten so past that, had moved so beyond it, that they failed to notice what had happened right at their own doorstep. Found out they immediately began to speak of this hope, of this good news. Today we're going to talk about our last king word, our last K-I-N-G word. It's this idea of thanking. Now I know we just came out of Thanksgiving. Okay, and so Thanksgiving is, well, that, you know, thanking happens at Thanksgiving, getting happens at Christmas, right? Or giving, or whichever one you prefer more, I don't know. It's really funny. In some people's homes, people really enjoy getting. I mean, let's be honest, we all enjoy getting to some extent. In some people's homes, people really enjoy giving, okay? Almost more than... And not always because they're just being selfless. Sometimes it's, you know, they like the joy that comes from giving to others and all, and that's a very cool thing. But I believe that if we're truly going to understand Christmas, we have to understand that thanking, this idea of being thankful and expressing it in some way, must be a part of celebrating Christmas. Because the greatest gift that any of us ever could have received happened when God chose to wrap himself in flesh and be Emmanuel, God with us. And so when that happened, all of a sudden we have this gift that we never could have deserved, we never could have earned. That's why it's a gift. See, if it's something that I earn, it's not a gift. It's a wage. Okay, if I go and I work mowing somebody's yard, right? And they ask me to come do that, I say, if you mow my yard, I will pay you $20. Well, they don't give me a gift of $20. They pay me the wage that I earned of $20. But if I'm just walking down the street and somebody comes out of their house and says, hey, I'd like for you to have this $20, that's a gift. I didn't do anything to earn it. Okay, maybe my dashing good looks as I was walking by, but other than that, there's nothing that I did to earn that gift. And so they hand it to me and they give it to me. It's a gift. There's a difference between something that is earned and something that is given. It's part of why the whole Santa Claus thing, okay, is just royally messed up. Let's be real honest, right? Okay, if you're good, you get gifts. No, if I have to be good to get them, then it means I've earned gifts. They're therefore no longer gifts because I earned them. They're wages, right? If I'm not good, I get coal. Once again, I earned that. Not a gift, I earned it. But when Jesus came, he provided something for us that we could not earn on our own. He gave us this gift of hope. When hope came down. Before that, before Jesus chose to break into our reality, before he chose to come and offer himself as a sacrifice for you and for me, it was all about how good I could be. It was about whether or not I could follow the rules. It's about whether or not I could go through the correct rituals and customs. But when Jesus came in, he fulfilled those rituals and customs to the point that it was no longer that kept me separated from God. The only thing now that can keep me separated from God is a rejection of the gift that he offers to me, that he offers to you. The fact that he chose to pour himself out to pay the debt for my sins and for yours is this unbelievable gift that I could never, ever earn. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 2 today. It's where we've been for the vast majority of this series. I'm going to hit the verses that we've gotten to earlier, but we're going to move on from there a little bit. Matthew 2, starting in verse 1. Go ahead, Audrey, throw it on up there. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of King Herod, wise men from the east arrived unexpectedly in Jerusalem. Now, we talked the first week. The reason it was unexpected is because the people there had not been watching for what was going to take place. They weren't ready for what was about to happen. They were saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." Now when King Herod heard this, he was deeply disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. So he assembled all the chief priests and scribes of the people and asked them where the Messiah would be born. So instead of proactively looking for this thing that God was going to do, they were reactionary. Now, that's something that a lot of us, if we are really, really honest, that is the trap that we fall into. We react to life rather than being proactive about life. Here's what I mean by that. Some of you this year are going to be proactive in getting people gifts. Somebody that means something to you, somebody that's significant, special, whatever. And so you go out and you get them a gift. Some of you are going to be reactionary in your gifts. Somebody got you a present that you did not expect to get you a present. Now you feel this thing inside of you that says, oh my goodness, if they gave me a present and I don't give them a present, I look bad. And so you run out to get a present at the last minute for them. And so you put tons of thought into it at your local Walgreens to find something for them, right? And so you get them a gift in return, and it's a reactionary gift rather than a proactive gift. Because we have gotten into the mindset that gifts should be exchanged. If I get a gift, I should have given a gift. Never the intention of gifts. Once again, If I have to give a gift to get a gift, then it's something I'm earning. It's a trade. It's an exchange. A gift is something that is given without anything expected in return. Some of us are proactive in the way that we handle our finances. You know what I mean? Put something away for a rainy day or a broken furnace or whatever the thing might be, right? And because you've been proactive in the way that you handle that, then you are able to take care of things as they happen. Others of us are reactionary with our finances. Once it breaks, we go, oh no. And we react to that and we try to figure out, how are we going to figure our way out of this? How are we going to manage to make it work? Some of us are proactive in our relationships. Some of us are reactionary in our relationships. Some of us are proactive in our schoolwork. Others are reactionary. And at 10 o'clock on the night before it's due, we realize maybe I should get started on this 12-page paper, right? I mean, that's kind of what happens. So these wise men from the East were proactive in the way that they went about seeking Jesus. Herod and those who were closest to him geographically and even historically, those who were closest to him were reactionary in the way that they responded to Jesus. In Bethlehem of Judea, they told him, because this is what was written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the leaders of Judah, because out of you will come a leader who will shepherd my people Israel. Now, this is really important for us to understand, because a lot of us have the idea that when Jesus came down, he went to this remote place where no one would be looking for him. He went to this out-of-the-way place where he could just kind of sneak into the world. No. It had been foretold, it had been prophesied long before this, that Bethlehem is the place that God was going to send the Messiah. Bethlehem, this place where the mighty David, King David, had come from. This is where it was going to happen. They had been told over and over this was going to take place, and yet people failed to look. So this is what Herod did. Verse 7, he secretly summoned the wise men and asked them the exact time the star appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search carefully for the child. When you find him, report back to me so that I too can go and worship him. After hearing the king, they went on their way, and there it was, the star they had seen in the east. It led them until it came and stopped above the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed beyond measure. Entering the house, another reason we know they are no longer at the stable, okay? Didn't say entering the barn, entering the shed, entering the house where they're now living, right? They saw the child with Mary his mother, and falling to their knees, they worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Now, as a kid, I told you guys when we started this series that We Three Kings has a special place in my heart, the song. When I was very young, we'd moved from Illinois to Missouri. We got to a new church, and I got there after they'd handed out all the parts for the Christmas play. Okay, and as a young kid, that was especially disturbing because as a young kid in a Christmas play, you want to be somebody wearing a bathrobe. That's the way it is, because the people in the bathrobes have the important parts, right? No guy wants to be an angel, even though all the angels that we read about in the Bible are dudes, okay? No guy wants to be an angel because it just looks girly, right? And you don't want to be the donkey, whole nother set of reasons, right? Okay? So you want to be a dude in a bathrobe. That's what you want. And I got there after all the bathrobe parts had been handed out. Didn't get to wear the fun cloth napkin on the head with the cord tied around it and that kind of thing. Didn't have it. In fact, there were really no parts left in the play. But the person who was leading the play, very flamboyant guy who was kind of neat and fun and all, he figured out a fix. Okay? Because there was a kid who had been assigned to be the camel. They had this wonderful cardboard cutout of a camel with a hole in the hump that the kid would put his face through, and he was the camel. And the way that you fix not having a part for another kid is by making the camel a two-humped camel. So now they make a different cardboard cutout with 2 humps, 2 holes. Our faces go in there, and we're out there doing the background parts for We Three Kings. It's why it has a very special place in my heart, because I was somewhat traumatized by the fact that I was the back end of a 2-humped camel. Once again, another joke for another time. These kings come, and they are worshiping Jesus. Now, you need to understand that the culture at the time, the culture of worship is very different than today. The culture of worship then was very formal. Okay? You would come and you would worship, you would give honor to those who were in positions of authority above you. If there was a king, you would bow down and you would worship him. That was an understanding, it was a physical posture very familiar at this time. One of the ways that you would worship that honored dignitary is that you would give them gifts. So because the wise men had come in anticipation of finding the King of the Jews, they had brought gifts fit for a king. Except they brought gifts fit for this particular king. Not just generic gifts, very specific gifts. The first gift that they give is a gift that all of us would love to receive this Christmas. Gold. You want to give me gold? I am totally okay with that. All right. Like, even if it's just a little bit, it's fine. 6, 7 ounces, I'd be great with that. Whatever you want to hand me would be awesome, okay? Gold, we understand now because we see it as valuable. Gold at that time is an understanding that this is royalty. Okay, crowns were made from gold. Scepters were made from gold. Thrones were encrusted with gold. It was the kind of thing that gold signified that this was royalty. And here they are in this home of a humble carpenter and his wife with this little baby, and they are giving a gift that acknowledges the fact that Jesus is royalty. Now that's interesting because royalty has a very distinct position in their time. Royalty means that they have authority. Royalty is not like today where we have the royal family in England that everybody likes to watch and gossip about because it's interesting, right? Which royal is having a baby this month and that kind of thing, and what dress did they wear, and whose hairdo is like what, and all that kind of thing, and how much longer is the queen going to hang around, and all that kind of good stuff. See, we see royalty now as something of an oddity. We see royalty as something that doesn't have any real authority or power. They're just a figurehead. But at this time that we're talking about with these wise men from the East, royalty is someone with absolute authority. They have the authority over whether or not you live and die. They have authority over what your position will be. They have authority over whether or not you are free to do the things that you want to do with your life. Royalty carries authority. So they present this gift of gold, recognizing that royalty, that authority. Now they offer a second gift. It's the one that kids always mess up when they're saying it and they're young, right? Frankincense. Now frankincense, if you take frank off of it, we begin to understand what it is, okay? It's incense. Okay, frankincense is a very specific kind of incense. Frankincense is the incense that is used in the temple. Frankincense is the incense that is used in the Holy of Holies. Now, I grew up in a typical evangelical Protestant church, okay? Grew up in fairly small towns most of the time growing up. And in the churches that I walked into growing up, you kind of knew some things were going to happen the moment you walked in. You knew that there was going to be a set of pews. You knew there was going to be a choir loft up in the front. You knew there was going to be a pulpit. You knew there was going to be a piano side and an organ side. Okay, some of you may have grown up in churches like that, and you understand what I mean by piano side and organ side. Somebody would say, hey, where are you going to be sitting on Sunday? 3rd row, piano side. Well, I meant you were going to be on the left side if you were facing the pulpit. Because every church I was ever at, piano was on the left side facing the pulpit and the organ was on the right. I'm fairly certain that's in 2nd Babylonian somewhere, that biblically it has to be that way. But that's just what it was. And so you walked in, you had piano side, you had organ side, and you would come in there. And I remember that about the biggest change church to church was the size of the auditorium, how comfortable the pews were or weren't. You know, I never got to like find out, like, you know, like one church had a really good pastor and the other one didn't, because my dad was the pastor every place I went, so I was pretty fortunate every time, you know. But then I went away to college, and when I was at college, I was training as a voice student, and my voice professor came to me one time and he said, hey, they want you to cant for evensong at the Episcopal Cathedral. Didn't have a clue what that was. Had never done that before, and they have this special evening service called Evensong, and it's mainly a service full of songs. And the cantor is the one who would sing the call and response time with the congregation. They didn't have a worship leader. Back when I was a kid, the worship leader leading the hymns would stand up front and would wave their arms like this. And nobody knew what that meant, but they knew that you should do that if you were a good song leader, okay? And at this Episcopal church, they didn't do that. Somebody would sing, and then you would respond back. And they said, hey, they need a tenor cantor for the evensong. Would you be willing to do that? And at first I'm like, well, you know, will they let me come do that? And they said, hey, it pays $200. Yes, I am there. Whatever you want me to do, whatever you want me to sing, fine. So I show up and I go sing, and they put me in this robe. And this robe, like the priests and the other people that are there, they get these like flashy, nice robes. They're shiny and they're purple and they're green. They're all these different colors and that kind of stuff. They gave me basically a burlap sack to wear. Okay, it's like this brown burlap robe, and it's got this like dingy hemp-looking cord around it to tie around and everything. And I walk in, and so there's this guy out front, and he's carrying a cross out in front of him. There's a couple guys behind him carrying these big, huge, tall candles. And then there's some of the important people, and I'm the very last person. And right before me is this person with what looks like a medieval mace. It's this handle about this long, wooden handle about as big around as a baseball bat. He's got to grab it with two hands. And on the end of it is this big metal ball, and instead of spikes in it, it's got holes all over it. No big deal, except right before we go out, we're all in this back hallway. We're going to march down the middle. They tell me we're going to march. We're going to go back around. Then I'm going to go up to the choir loft by the big pipe organ and all. And before it happens, the two guys with the candles, they come over and they put their candles underneath the big metal ball at the end of the mace. I'm like, are they going to brand somebody with this thing, or what's going on? I really wasn't sure what's happening. All of a sudden, this smoke starts billowing out of this metal ball. There was incense inside of it. I had never experienced that in worship service before. Had never seen it. And so this guy in front of me, he is swinging this thing back and forth and back and forth right in front of me as I'm walking. Now I have to sing. I start just hysterically coughing about halfway down the aisle because it's this huge cloud of incense in front of me, and it fills every sinus cavity I've got, and I'm like tearing up as I walk down and have to get ready to go sing. But what was cool about it, I had never experienced multi-sensory worship before. Okay? Like some of the churches I grew up in, like you clapped if the baseball team won over the weekend, okay, but like you didn't clap in worship. That just wasn't something that we did a whole lot. And so like I hadn't experienced like, you know, physical interaction like that. We would sing, we'd talk, we'd read, we'd do those kinds of things. But like using the sense of smell, that's not something I'd ever done before in worship. And here it was, and it was in front of me. Well, that's exactly what would take place at this time in Jewish worship. They would have these huge, tall, they would look like candle stands, but instead there would be this crushed frankincense. And it would be lit, and it would begin to smoke, and it would fill the area of the Holy of Holies. Now, one of the reasons they would have this constantly going is because they were offering sacrifices. Okay? Animal sacrifices don't smell pretty. They just don't. And so they would light this frankincense so that way the aroma would be something that would be pleasing. See, when they came and offered frankincense to Jesus, they were acknowledging the fact that not only was he royalty, but he was also a priest. fact, the Bible talks about him being our high priest, him being the one who has gone on our behalf to God the Father to make a way for us to be reconnected to God. In spite of our sin, in spite of our failings, in spite of all of the things that have gone on in our life, Jesus has made a way for us. Now, the last one is this gift, myrrh. Now, myrrh, besides being a funny word that's spelled a funny way, to help you understand what myrrh is, it's so far removed from the other two gifts. Gold is about royalty. Frankincense is about this high priest, both honored positions at the time, things that everyone there would have understood. But myrrh is something so different. See, back then when you died, preservation was not something that easily happened, okay? You didn't wait a week to have a funeral. Because if you waited a week to have a funeral, nobody was going to be able to walk within half a mile of where the body was being kept. You got to remember, this is the Middle East, and it's that arid, dry, everything that's going on, and so the body would begin to decompose fairly quickly. But what they would do is they would take this myrrh and they would crush it, and they would add liquid to it, and they would begin to place it on the body to have the best understanding of what it is. It's the closest thing to early embalming fluid that we could possibly understand. It was used to preserve a body in death. Now tell me, why in the world would these three guys show up from this far off distant land? They offer Jesus gold to signify his royalty. They offer him frankincense to acknowledge that he is a priest. And then they offer him embalming fluid. Because they understood something that those who were closest to him would not understand, almost to the point of his death. Jesus was royalty. Jesus was the great high priest who would make a way for us. But the way that he would do that is by offering himself as a sacrifice for you and for me. And so even while he was this young baby, they acknowledged the fact that this child would die. Not a pointless death, not a meaningless death, but a death that would make a way for you and for me. When I look at Christmas, I love all the trappings of the season. It's fun for me. I enjoy the meals that we're going to get to eat this week. I enjoy the desserts and the special dishes and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to enjoy getting together with friends. We've had the opportunity over the last few nights to get together with some friends and just enjoy spending time with one another and make connection and do. I love that. I'm going to get to see family this next week that I don't often get to see. But see, Christmas is not just a time for us to get together. Christmas is not just a time for us to exchange gifts with those that we think are going to get gifts for us. Christmas is a time for us to understand the ultimate gift that was given at Christmas. I shared this a couple years ago. When I first went away to college in Kansas City, Missouri, the director of our music department was one of the foremost hymnologists in the United States. Some of you have no idea what a hymnologist is. That's all right. It's okay. It's somebody who studies hymns, okay? This guy was like a walking encyclopedia of hymns. If you told him, if you asked him about a hymn, he would tell you who wrote it, what year they wrote it, what the name of the tune is, who wrote the tune, where they wrote it at, when it became popular. I mean, he could tell you all this kind of stuff about every hymn that was almost ever written. He was amazing. And he had been part of helping put together a new hymnal. And there was one song in that hymnal that he personally had shown to the hymnal committee. Okay, this group of people that were gathered together to find this group of songs that would be included in this hymnal. And the hymn that he personally went to bat for to try to get included in this was a song called "Christmas Has Its Cradle." because Christmas has its manger is harder to rhyme with, okay? So it's easier to rhyme cradle than manger. And so he put this together, and it was this incredibly beautiful melody. It was a wonderful song just to hear, but the words of it were far different than any Christmas song I was used to. It said this: Christmas has its cradle where a baby cried. And it goes on and it talks about the fact that here was this place where God had come to be with us, to dwell among us. But then as it gets to the last verse, it says, Christmas has its cradle, but Easter has its cross. Because Jesus didn't come to be remembered as the baby in a cradle. Jesus came so that we might experience the victory that came from him being the perfect, spotless lamb on the cross. He didn't come so we could have warm fuzzies when we sing Silent Night. He came so that we could rejoice when we were reminded that he is crowned with many crowns and that up from the grave he arose, because he is the King who is able to conquer. He is the priest who made a way to connect us with God. He was the sacrifice that was made so that we might find a personal relationship with our Creator. The band's going to come back up, and we're going to revisit that song that we sang just right before the end of our worship time together, because to me, this is what Christmas must be for us this week. This is what must take place in our lives if we are truly going to be seeking him and speaking the good news of Jesus and thanking him for what he has done. We must acknowledge that what happened at Christmas is that hope came down. It wasn't just a baby. It wasn't just a moment. It wasn't just this beautiful nativity scene. It was the fact that hope that had not been present in that way before, hope came down to dwell among us. God with us, Emmanuel. A couple quick announcements, and then we're going to end with this. This week, many of our groups are going to be celebrating Christmas and all the things that go on with it. So some of our groups won't be meeting this week. You need to be checking with your own small group leader to see who's meeting and who isn't. Our Sunday night group will be meeting tonight. We're meeting at 5 o'clock, not 4:30, meeting at 5 o'clock tonight. Journey Live is meeting tonight at 4 o'clock. You don't want to miss out on that if you've got students grades 7 through 12. On Tuesday night, from 5:30 to 8:30, there is going to be an all-church Christmas open house, just kind of a come and go kind of thing. It's going to be held at Kyle and Carol Ponton's house. There'll be information. They've already got up there. That's where it's at, 1216 South 6th Street, 6th Avenue in Kankakee, which is just 2 streets over from the church that we're looking at potentially purchasing. So you can go and take a look at the outside of it on your way to their event on Tuesday night. We'd love to have you just come there and just hang out and get to spend some time with each other. Sometimes those of us in different groups don't get the opportunity to connect outside of church. It's a great time to do that and to celebrate. Many of us are going to gather together with our family and friends this week and have the opportunity to do that. Some of you may not have that same opportunity. Can I tell you, if you're here today and you don't have somebody to connect with on Christmas, let one of us know before you go today. We would love to find ways to help connect with you on Christmas. We believe that as a church family, we're just as connected as our relational families, and we want to be there for one another. But we need to be reminded today before we leave that the reason of this season is not all the gifts, it's not all the hoopla, but it's that hope came down.